Here and welcome to Cosi Talks 2024. All right, I am streaming to Facebook, to YouTube, and for the very first time, I am streaming right now to Instagram. So those of you who are watching me for on Instagram for the first time, welcome. Don't be shy and ask me your questions. So I'm going to give you a couple of minutes for everyone to jump on board. All right, let's see. Okay, I will be jumping back and forth between a couple of screens. I see some of you coming on board right now. As you come on board, give me a shout out. Let me know who you are, where you're from, and to get this party started right for the new year, what is in your mug or in your drink. So, cheers. I have got my hot chocolate because for the very few days in Florida that we can justify having hot chocolate, today is one of them. So, cheers, folks. Mm. Let's see, we got Kathy coming on board from Spokane, Washington. We got Steve Duncan. Happy New Year to you as well. Moet Queen, Happy New Year. I like your name. Moye Queen. Am I saying that right? The topic is going to be a lot of things. So tonight is a general question and answer session. I like to call it open season on the PT. Hey guys, by the way, I'm using a new Hoopy Scoopy mic that my tech team got me for Christmas. Look at this thing. Look at this thing. It's like the King Kong of microphones. So, guys, can you just let me know how my sound is doing? I'm like almost afraid to touch it. But can you guys give me a thumbs up in the comment section if the audio is coming through okay? We got Drew on board. We got Felicia. Now just add to TikTok. I know, guys, I have some exciting news about that, Felicia. You're going to be so proud of me. So give me a second there. We got Kesha saying it's cold in Missouri, and I don't blame you. You have tea. Let's see. Steven says, even from New Jersey, I have my Gatorade Zero. Cheers, Jenny. Oh, I'm so glad to see you on here. We got Scott coming in from West Virginia, water in his cup. Happy New Year to you too, Tom. I am so happy you're here. Hey there, Rob from Indiana with your Diet Mountain Dew. Let's see, we got a lot of y'all on board. Thank you, guys. Whoops. I accidentally pressed the wrong button. That's all right. There we go. I have a computer. The mouse on my computer is very sensitive. We got Tommy coming in from St. Pete. I got my fellow Floridian right there. Hola, compadre. Happy New Year, man. Thanks for joining in. We got Richard. Oh man, the mic is good. Okay. Yay. My tech team is going to be so proud of me that I am using my new microphone. I mean, this thing is beautiful. It weighs like 20 pounds. No joke. I could probably club somebody over the head with this thing and be in a lot of trouble. We got, Ed from Baltimore Red Wine. I got to give a shout out to my buddy Ed. He is a physical therapy colleague of mine. He works out of Johns Hopkins, an amazing physical therapist. Guys, there are some of you actually here who have gone to see him. He is an expert on osseointegration, and I have had such a wonderful time working together with him this past year and looking forward to future collaborations. All right, you guys can hear me. Thank you guys for that heads up. We got Emily from Central PA. Girl, I got your question right here. We got Rochelle from Las Vegas with lemon tea in her cup. Randy from San Diego. Sherry says it sounds good. Thank you very much, Sherry. Yay. Okay. So, guys, I have a lot of things to catch you up on. So, first of all, January 4th, which was like 6 days ago, Cosi Talks turned 6 years old. Don't I look good for 6, right? 6 years old, guys. I've been broadcasting this show for 6 years. Holy cow. Like, my little one was just out of diapers when I started this show. It's kind of crazy for me. I was just finishing and recovering from chemo treatment when I started this show. So I just thought about that, and I've been doing a show. The first year I did 2 shows a week for a full year, and then years 2 through 6 I've been doing a show every single Wednesday. The exception being these past 2 weeks where I decided to give myself a nice Christmas break. 6 years. 6 years. And guys, it's a total tribute to you guys who keep tuning in and keep listening and keep bringing me your questions and your ideas for more topics and everything that we do here. So holy cow. 6 years, right? So, hola, comadre, good to see you. Yes, Emily, I got your question by text. Guys, those of you, Julie, man, All my favorite people are here tonight. We got Julie Conley on board. This lady right here is the expert on insurance reimbursement, guys. The expert. Where's Bob? No, he did not get fired for the new year. He is sitting right there behind me. I had to switch positions, so he's probably a little sore at me right now because I'm blocking, his glamour view there. We got Brett from Kansas with coffee in his cup. We've got, oh, thank you, Pat. I appreciate that. So, guys, a lot of really cool things. So, Felicia was teasing me a little bit about how I have to join TikTok. So, another reason why I'm just like, woohoo, bubbly and over the moon is I've added someone to my Cosi Talks team, which it's huge. It's huge. Those of you who own small businesses, you can appreciate how challenging it can be to grow your small business and investing back in your small business and seeing it grow. So one of the things that I wanted to invest in this year was someone to help me with social media. So someone who's going to help me with posting and help me with content. And, those of you who do anything for social media for a living, you understand what a time suck that can be, right? So I'm so excited to have this person on my team, mainly because it means I get to start making more content, more tips and tricks, more videos of me working with patients and amputees and showing you guys everything that I talk about on this show. So you're going to start to see some changes in my social media channels. One of them is that I will be adding a TikTok account to it that will come later on down the line. I fought tooth and nail, but I lost that battle. So yes, Cosi Talks will be going to TikTok, and I expect all of you to follow me on there when I do. So I'm really excited because, like I said, guys, my favorite thing about doing this show is getting to make videos where I answer your questions, where I do videos working with my patients. And it's just grown to a point where I don't have the ability and the time to do that and do all the social media posting and editing and all that kind of fun stuff myself. So really, really grateful for the tech team that I've had up until now. And that is continuing to support me with wonderful equipment like you see here. And then the new person that I've added to this team. So hopefully I'll be able to introduce them to you guys personally at some point in the future. So that's been the craziness for the past couple of weeks. I'm also onboarding my new 2024 sponsors. So you're going to be seeing that in the next couple of weeks. Those of you who are signed up for my email subscriptions, look for these emails because I do have a lot of great information on my sponsors that you're going to want to see. And you can sign up by going to my website, cositalks.com, scroll all the way to the bottom, and you can sign up for my emails. So guys, I know I've got like a lot of information I'm throwing at you. We got a lot of folks coming in also on. Awesome. Okay. All right. So guys, another heads up. Those of you who joined in just a minute ago, I am broadcasting to Facebook, Instagram, and my YouTube channel. Right? So there are some of you who prefer to watch me on a particular channel. And at some point in the very near future, I'm also going to be able to broadcast to LinkedIn as well. So I'm really, really excited because this really hopefully will make the algorithm gods happy. And we can start spreading the message of this show a little bit more. So I should probably formally introduce myself. For those of you joining me for the first time, welcome and Happy New Year. My name is Cosi Belloso. I'm a physical therapist, amputee specialist here in not so hot, not so sticky Florida. We're having some beautiful, cool weather right now after that crazy storm we had yesterday. I've been a PT now for over 23 years, and my passion is working with the amputee and limb loss community. So for those of you who are joining this show and going, what is this show about? This show is for you. It's for the amputee and limb loss community. And to me, that means folks who are amputees, folks who are caregivers and family members to amputees, and clinicians who are helping amputees. That to me is what forms the amputee community as a whole. So in sessions like tonight we have an open question and answer session, open season on the PT. You are more than welcome to put your questions into the comments section. If you would prefer to send me your questions, you can do so at my email, which I'm posting right now. So you can write that down and I answer all of my emails. Yay, especially now that I have more help, I can answer them a little bit faster now. So I'm really, really excited. Happy New Year to you too, Harsh. Thank you, Andrea. And I've got so many wonderful people here that I'm really excited, guys. Just so excited. And you'll have to excuse me because Instagram, I have to kind of flip-flop back and forth. and making sure I'm getting the questions on my Instagram viewers as well. All right, let's get started. I have questions that were sent to me by email, questions that were sent to me by text message, and I'm a happy PT because I have full pages of questions. I love it when you guys send me questions. All right. This first question, it was more of a comment. This came to me from a mother. She emailed me and she said, my 30-year-old son is a recent below the knee amputee. He had a car accident on Christmas Eve. He's now in rehab, unable to stand because of the pain, and is walking with crutches due to the pressure and pain in the leg. Out of state, but going to help. I myself am 68 years old. What can I tell him? Does he need to heal more? Will that pressure lessen? I know it's early on. Thank you, a concerned mom. So as you guys know, I'm a mother of 4 children. So, whenever I receive an email from a parent who's concerned about their child, regardless of the child's age, whether it's a young minor child or an adult child, that definitely always has a special place in my heart. So when it comes to post-amputation pain, yes, unfortunately, that is very, very normal. In the 23 years I've been working as a physical therapist, I would say the top 5 things that are the most painful traumas to the human body: burn trauma, broken bone, amputation pain, and metastatic pain from bone cancer that has metastasized to the bones. When I've worked with patients in the past, I've noticed that those are among the most painful things that I've seen my patients go through. So yes, unfortunately, it is normal. Now, a lot of times when I talk to my patients, I would say to them, I need you to understand, I try to explain to them what is the psychology of pain. And that's kind of like a Cosi thing. Okay. I'm not taking that from any official research. It's just me working with patients over 23 years. I've learned that when patients can start to understand why the pain is there and some of the physiology, simply speaking, behind it, it makes them a little bit easier, not easier, but it kind of helps them manage the pain and work through the pain. Okay. So pain is basically our body telling us something is wrong, something ain't right. Right. And in the case of an amputation, it's very obvious for us to identify what it is that our body is not happy about. Okay. Specifically, what's going on is that you have a lot of inflammation, a lot of swelling, right? And it's all pushing in on these severed muscles, on these cut nerves, on this skin that has been cut and pulled and stitched tight, right? So all this swelling is collecting in this limb and it's just pushing up on everything. And that is what's really causing that pain. Okay. So that is where the neighborhood friendly physical therapist can really play a role in helping things out. Okay. Best way to get rid of pain. Obviously, you have to work with your doctor and your medical team for medical management, especially in those early days. But movement is another important component part of helping with pain. And the reason is if you can start to move some of that inflammation out of that limb, some of that edema, you might hear the word edema, inflammation, same thing, right? If you can move that out of the limb, you will start to relieve the pressure on those structures. And this mother in particular, she mentioned pain and pressure, and that's where that's coming from. Okay. And this again is where the physical therapist, the occupational therapist help with early mobility, help them start using the muscles and activating the muscles in the residual limb to help use those muscles as a pump to pump out that inflammation. Okay. And when it comes to the recovery from amputation and a lot of the surgeries, it's a 2 steps forward, 1 step back, right? You start to move and some of that inflammation might start to subside. But then on the following day, when you start moving, you might trigger some of that inflammation and it'll puff up again just a little bit. Okay. So it's kind of a 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And then also using other techniques, compression, right? If you were in the hospital, and those of you who are experienced amputees, I would love to have your input here because I think that our newer amputees benefit from seeing your comments. Those of you who are my experienced amputees, when you were in the hospital, were you given a compression garment or a shrinker? Perhaps maybe not a shrinker right off the bat, but a compression garment to help with the swelling, right? So depending on your surgeon and depending on their protocol, they might give you a compression garment, which is exactly that. It's going to put a little bit of compression on that limb to help start pushing that fluid out. And again, it's kind of a guess and check scenario to know how much is too much pressure where it's going to cause more pain, and just, just to have just enough pressure to provide some of that relief and some of that fluid outflow. Okay, so I'm curious to hear how many of you had a form of compression right after surgery to help with the inflammation. Eric says, I got a shrinker and a liner. Jeff says, I'm a new amputee. Love. Okay, Jeff, welcome. And then again, if you have any questions, Jeff, feel free to put it in there. Steven says, I was given a shrinker 2 days after surgery. Literally 2 days. I had surgery on July the 26th, and the 28th, started wearing a shrinker. Richard had a shrinker. Eric had a shrinker. Drew says, nope. Moye Queen had shrinkers. Lori says, I'm 2 years post-op and still wear a shrinker at night. Okay. So again, when it comes to pain management, it's a combination of a lot of different things. But again, to me, it begins with understanding, why am I having this pain? Okay. And then the second thing is people will say, is this pain, how long is this pain going to last? Is this pain going to last forever? Because when you're in the thick of that kind of post-surgical pain, it's kind of hard to see the light at the end of the tunnel. Okay. And I can speak from professional and from personal experience as well. Okay. So a lot of times it's understanding what is the reason behind the pain, working with your medical team, okay? How to time the medications, how to determine what is too much medication because you don't want to snow yourself, and what's too little medication. You got to get the Goldilocks, the just right scenario, okay? And then movement. How are you incorporating movement to help flush out that inflammation, right? And then when you're not moving, working again with the nursing staff and with the therapist to understand, how should I position my limb, right? So that I can take advantage of perhaps elevation or compression without causing any kind of contractures in the limb, right? So I feel like when you address all of these issues, you're going to have more success with pain management right after surgery. Okay. Lori says she used a TENS unit for discomfort and inflammation, and that usually comes a little bit further down the line. And yes, Eric, you're right. It does go away over time. Again, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, but you do see progress. Emily says, I still wear my shrinker when I'm not in my prosthesis. And we've talked a lot about that on the show, guys. I love shrinkers. For me, I think they're wonderful. Not everybody needs to continue using it for the rest of their lives, but many of you and many of my patients, they choose to continue using the shrinker even well after their limb has reached a stable shape and volume, just because it feels more comfortable at night. And for many of you, it also helps keep the limb shrunken so that you can get into your prosthesis the next morning without issues. Okay. Let's see. We got John here. Okay. So John sent me a question about someone that he was helping with. And apparently this person was going to undergo transmalleolar amputation. And there was a debate as to whether the individual should have transmalleolar amputation versus a below the knee amputation. So here's where Bob's going to help us out. Guys, for those of you who are new to the show, meet Bob. Bob is my sometimes rather reluctant patient model. He can be a little snarky at times, but overall he's a pretty good chap. All right. And he can be cooperative for the most part. Poor little guy, your collarbone just keeps popping out. That clavicle needs to go back in place. Okay. So transmalleolar amputation. These are your malleoli. Basically, it's your ankle. So the pokey part of your ankle on each side, you have a medial malleoli, the one that's on the inner part of your ankle, and a lateral malleoli. And as you can see, Bob has some very nice slim ankles, so you can't really appreciate those bumps sticking out on his malleoli. So transmalleolar amputation, it's exactly that. It goes right across the malleoli. So the foot comes off, okay? And that's a little different from the below the knee amputation, where you're going up into the tibia and into the fibula. These are the two bones, tibia and fibula. The tibia is the big shin bone, and the fibula, you don't even feel it. It's a very thin little bone that goes off to the side right here. Okay. And there's pros and cons to each. So the biggest pro about having a transmalleolar amputation versus a below the knee is that you have a longer lever arm, right? So the longer your residual limb, the easier it will be for you to walk. You will have less energy expenditure compared to someone who has a shorter amputation. And this just goes all the way up the line, right? The higher up you go, the more challenging it's going to be to walk because you have a shorter lever arm. Okay. And that's the big one there. Now, the biggest pro with having a below the knee amputation compared to transmalleolar is the shape. Okay. So if you're doing transmalleolar, and again, it just depends on the surgeon and what they call that, um, you still are going to have the shape of the ankle. So it's going to be kind of bulbous at the end, right? Which can make it a little challenging to fit into a prosthesis, right? So if you think about that for your prosthesis, look at my box of toys here. I have to clean out my box of toys. Okay. So for the most part in a prosthesis, right, you have a bigger, wider part up top and it kind of funnels into almost like a conical shape at the bottom. So the bottom is going to be more narrow. When you have something like a transmalleolar or a knee disarticulation, this end part is going to be bulbous, right? So it's going to be a little bit more challenging to push the residual limb through, right, to get down to that bulbous part. One of the challenges. The other challenge when you have such a long residual limb as in a transmalleolar is that you have less options for prosthetic feet. And the reason for that is the build height, right? So if you notice, right, Bob's going to be standing on 2 feet. So if he loses just this 1 foot, right, he's only going to have that much space between the end of his limb and the ground, right? So the prosthetist is going to have a challenge finding a foot, right, that will be short enough or low profile enough to fit underneath there and not cause things to be uneven. Versus if you have a below the knee amputation, you have a little more wiggle room there to work with when it comes to a prosthetic fitting. So that's kind of like the general pros and cons. Now, as far as who should have what, that is so individual. It really depends on, it really just depends on the individual. What are they looking to do in their life? Are they young and teenage years where they're perhaps like this particular individual and they may want to get back to doing sports? What is going to be the best fit for them? Right? There's a lot of different things associated there. So each case is really just individual with what their needs are going to be. All right. Let's see. Daniel says, I'm almost 8 years out and I wear a shrinker every night. Hey, Denise. Denise says, I still wear a shrinker 5.5 years in, more from habit at this point since I've finally leveled off. Let's see. Kathy says, my prosthetist told me to throw away my shrinker because they were the wrong size and way too tight. Instead, he told me to wear my liner instead. I have to say I politely disagree with that, Kathy. Not with the part that your shrinker didn't fit. I agree. Your shrinker needs to be remeasured every once in a while because your limb will continue to shrink, right? So I don't have a shrinker. I do have a liner, which is kind of the same shape. So we'll just pretend that this is a shrinker. So as you shrink, what some of my prosthetists have done in the past is they will just sew a little bit of a seam in here to kind of make it a little bit smaller. Or they just order a new shrinker. I don't agree with the liner acting as a shrinker because the purpose of the liner is not to provide compression. That's not what the liner is meant to do. So if you're somebody who needs a little bit of compression at night to help with fluid management and volume management, liner's not going to do it. Second thing is your skin needs a break from the liner. Okay. These liners have come a long way since I started working as a physical therapist when dinosaurs roamed the earth. Okay. So we have some really great materials with silicone, custom polyurethane, gel liners. We got a lot of good stuff here. But ultimately, your skin needs a break from this liner, especially if you're wearing it all day long. Okay. So a shrinker typically is made out of it breathes a little bit more. Okay, so while I agree with your prosthetist that perhaps you needed a new liner, or excuse me, a new shrinker because your old one didn't fit, I don't agree with using your liner as a shrinker. That's just me. conversation you need to just have with your prosthetist and just ask them, can you just order me a new shrinker? Right? All right, let me look over at Instagram, make sure I'm not missing any Ooh, we got a lot of folks here coming in from Instagram. Yay. Okay. All right. Mm, okay, interesting. So Emily says my prosthetist recommended wearing just my liner when I'm not wearing my prosthesis as opposed to my shrinker. What does a liner do differently than a shrinker than when just worn by themselves? So Emily, I would ask that question to your prosthetist because I'm very curious to hear why a prosthetist would recommend. And if I do have any prosthetists on the show, I do typically have a couple sometimes that join the show, and I welcome their professional opinions. I'd be curious to know why they would recommend that, especially if it's someone who would benefit from the right amount of compression. So I would be curious to ask them that question, Emily. There might be something there that I haven't thought about. But I think a shrinker that's fit well is more beneficial. Um, again, and I'm just grasping at straws here. The only thing I can think of is sometimes it's kind of a pain in the butt to have to take off a liner and put a shrinker on. And I totally get that. So maybe your prosthetist is just saying, oh, okay, if you're just out about in your day and you take off your prosthesis, just leave your liner on and don't worry about putting on your shrinker. If you get busy in your day, I can understand why a prosthetist might advise that. Uh, But again, the shrinker really does that. It provides that compression. Liner does not. Mm, right. Brett says he'll be a foot shorter. Thank you, Brett. Um, Daniel says, I actually don't like to wear my liner when my leg is off because they're so much hotter than a shrinker. Yeah, they don't breathe as much. Um, Richard said, had a second amputation of the left foot, little toe on Thanksgiving, PT and OT weekly. Thank goodness. Really happy to hear when you guys are getting PT and OT. So Daniel says, some surgeons don't like shrinkers. Mine doesn't, but he knows I wear mine. And again, when it comes to post-op protocols, meaning right after your surgery, those days following the surgery, every surgeon's a little bit different. Some surgeons do not want a shrinker on the fresh amputated limb because they don't want sutures to be pulled or anything like that. And they have these they're called, they look like little tube socks, right? And you can cut it and customize the fit, and it's not as aggressive. It's much, much more gentle compression, and it's not as aggressive as a shrinker. So it's a lot easier to put on, especially in those first couple of days after amputation, where you can protect the wound site a little bit easier there too. Again, I just go by what the surgeon does, by what the surgeon recommends on those first few days after amputation. See, and Susan says, my prosthetist told me never to wear my liner to bed, only a shrinker. That's kind of what I'm thinking, but let's see. And you're right, Susan. A shrinker promotes blood flow like a figure 8 wrap. It provides compression. Let's see. So Beverly says, my husband already had several health issues before his above the knee amputation last week. Chronic back pain from military, Parkinson's. He's had several mobility issues. He's 68. We realize he won't be able to walk anymore, but just needs support in the psychological effects. It's been up and down. I need some suggestions on what to say and what not to say, etc. Do you deal with this emotional psychological effects? Thank you for this, as I've been feeling helpless and trying to support him sometimes. Beverly, yes. And Beverly, I don't know if you were here earlier. Here is my email address, Beverly. I'm putting it right there. It's cosi@cositalks.com. Please feel free, if you have any further questions, to email me directly, and I'm happy to try to help in any way I can. So the first thing that jumps out at me is that he is a veteran. So please thank him for his service on our behalf. But the VA has wonderful support system. I know my local Tampa VA here, the James Haley VA, is a wonderful place. They have a wonderful amputee program here with a lot of support there. So Beverly, first thing, take advantage of these benefits that you would have as a military veteran and also as a military wife, because during these times of trauma, especially if you're dealing with Parkinson's and you're dealing with a lot of things going on, you need the support as a family member. Second thing, I want you to look up the website for the Amputee Coalition. I'm typing this in, and it's specifically Their certified peer visitor program. So the Amputee Coalition is a non-for-profit organization. It's basically the amputee organization for the United States. Wonderful organization. We have some really wonderful people running it. And probably one of my favorite parts about this organization is their certified peer visitor program. So, Beverly, I want you to go to that website. I want you to check out the certified peer visitor. In fact, I probably have several certified peer visitors here on my show tonight. Raise of hand if you are a certified peer visitor for the Amputee Coalition. So, what they do, Beverly, is they try to match folks like your husband up with someone in the area, someone that lives close by to you who is an amputee with a similar amputation. And these are folks who they're amputees. They're not clinicians, they're not caregivers, they are amputees, and they've received training to become exactly this. It's almost like a mentor, an amputee mentor. And this is a really wonderful start because these certified peer visitors, not only have they received that kind of training, right, but they kind of know the ropes, right? So they'll be able to tell you and your husband in the area, where are your support groups, which I'm a huge, huge proponent of support groups, whether it's a virtual support group, which you'll find a lot of those, or it's an in-person support group. Okay. So those two things I would start to check right away, Beverly. And with the VA, and again, you'll have to refresh my memory. Typically, when you register with the VA, you're assigned either a case manager or a social worker. Take advantage of these angels. Okay. They are wonderful individuals who have wonderful resources, and you and your husband can benefit from this. Last but not least, and those of you know what I'm about to say, physical therapy. Okay. Physical therapy and occupational therapy. Obviously, that's what I do. That is my passion. That is what I feel so strongly about in bringing this in the life of an amputee. Even if your husband is not necessarily a candidate for walking with a prosthesis, okay, a physical therapist can help. And especially a physical therapist. And honestly, Beverly, I would look for a physical therapist if you're able to, who specializes in neuro PT, because I think the Parkinson's right now is something that you want someone who's familiar with working with Parkinson's. And I've had several cases where when I had a stroke patient who became an amputee, or someone with Parkinson's who became an amputee, and you're dealing with two pathologies there that need to be addressed equally, right? With regards to the mobility, your husband can still have mobility. Whether or not he can walk with a prosthesis, I don't know. Obviously, I can't see your husband. And that's something that I think an experienced physical therapist should evaluate your husband to really determine that. That's another key thing. I wouldn't let the surgeon tell you whether or not your husband can walk with a prosthesis. Find yourself a physical therapist who's an amputee specialist. They're the ones who are going to be able to tell you whether or not your husband's a candidate for walking. And then last but not least, I know I'm going off on a million tangents, Beverly, and I'm throwing everything in the kitchen sink at you, but I want to give you as much information as I possibly can. Even if your husband, let's say you find a physical therapist who's an amputee specialist, they evaluate your husband and they say, you know what? He's not necessarily a walking candidate. He might still be a candidate for using a prosthesis. Okay. And the reason for that is for transfers. And this is something that I worked for several years with several patients. They were not candidates for walking, but they just received a very simple prosthesis, nothing fancy, but something that was enough that they could stand up from a chair and move to the bed, or stand up from the chair and sit on the commode, right? And it makes it so much easier for the person, the amputee themselves, for the caregiver, yourself, who's helping this person with their mobility. And it just also gives that just extra bit of quality of life to know that they can at least stand to move from point A to point B, right? So these are questions, Beverly, that I want you to ask your team. I want you to get your husband in with that physical therapist who's an amputee specialist, which if you work with a VA, they're going to probably have one there. Okay. And ask them, squeak that wheel and ask him to be evaluated. Okay. And you have my email address. So please don't be shy. Email me any more of your questions. Okay. Guys, you can tell I have a soft spot for veterans. My dad was a veteran, and yeah. Okay, next. GI Jane's in the house. Speaking of my veterans, there's my girl, my paratrooper right there. All right. Oh, Moe Queen, can you tell me your real name? Because I don't even know if I'm saying that right. So Richard says he is a certified peer visitor and a Vietnam vet. Let's see. Emily says, my friend just had amputation. I'm trying to support them as much as possible. I just try to listen and meet with them where they're at in their journey. I'm not a certified peer visitor, at least not yet. And Emily, I think you're going to make an amazing one. Um, Victor says, how difficult is it going to be for me to make it without physical therapy? Whew, that's a bit of a loaded question. So, Victor, again, it's kind of hard for me to, I don't know much about your case, right? So, um, in general, I think anybody who is an amputee needs to see a physical therapist. And I know that that is not necessarily an opinion that every clinician will agree with me. And I've run into a lot of folks who don't agree with me with that statement. But here's kind of how I put it. If you break a bone, if you break your thigh bone, your femur, you go, you have it surgically repaired. You go get physical therapy. Most people accept that. If you tear your rotator cuff and you go have shoulder repair surgery, which is incredibly intense and painful, everybody knows you go see the physical therapist after you're done. If you are in a traumatic car accident and you experience several fractures all throughout your body, you know there's going to be physical therapy involved. So, why is it that when someone has a limb removed from their body, we question why they're going to need physical therapy? Yeah, those are crickets chirping that you're hearing right now. Okay. So, Victor, when it comes to how difficult will it be, do I have some people who say, well, I never saw a physical therapist and I put on my prosthesis and I figured out kind of sort of how to walk on my own? I do have a lot of people say that. I have a lot of prosthetists who will tell me that. But here's my concern. When you don't have the proper rehabilitation after amputation, right? These muscles don't have a chance to properly strengthen again. They don't have the chance to learn to work together again. Okay, which means that somewhere later on down the line, you're going to have problems and issues resulting from this. Okay, one of my favorite examples, and I know he doesn't mind my saying this because he gave me permission to say this, is my buddy Damon. Damon was in a motorcycle accident, as you can see, young man, and he had a below the knee amputation, and he never received physical therapy because he was never referred to it. None of his clinicians ever thought to refer him to a physical therapist. And he learned how to use a prosthesis more or less on his own. And he was doing a great job walking. But then later on, down the line, years down the line, when I started working with him, we realized the muscles in his residual limb were very, very weak. He took the time to do push ups and he kept himself in great shape that regard. But the muscles in his residual limb were very weak and it was preventing him from doing some of the activities. And he just thought, well, I guess I'll never be able to do these activities again. One of them was running. And he didn't realize that the reason why he couldn't run was because he had weakness in his residual limb that had never been rehabilitated by a physical therapist. So we put him on a strengthening protocol, and within 2 months, he was running. He runs with me 3 to 4 miles every Saturday morning on my run club. So, Victor, my general comment would be, why wouldn't you want physical therapy? Is it a question of access? Do you have access to it? Are you getting difficulty having access? Are you having difficulty getting your doctor to write a prescription for physical therapy? Is your prosthetist telling you you don't need a physical therapist? Okay. If these are any of the issues, this is where I encourage you to be an advocate for yourself and to really stick to the point and ask your doctor, yes, I do want to see a physical therapist. Okay. I do have the occasional, I can probably count the number of times on one hand in my entire career where I've had someone come in and I evaluated them and they truly did not need my services. They were good to go. Okay. And then I've had people who obviously needed a lot of extensive therapy and everything in between. And this is what I tell my prosthetist, my local prosthetist is, guys, let me be the one. I'm the physical therapist. Let me be the one to decide if your patient needs physical therapy or not. If your patient doesn't really need much work, then I can probably just do a program for them and have them work on it on their own. There's a lot of in between there, a lot of things that can be done. But as our bodies continue to age and break down as they go along, physical therapy is something that is really important to have on your medical team. Okay. So that's one of my big old soapboxes right there. So Rob says, I felt like I was lost, roaming around blindly, even though I was making great progress until I started physical therapy. It's a game changer. The other popular analogy is the prosthetist will build the car, physical therapy teaches you how to drive it. Okay. You know, I learned not, when I first started, speaking of which, when I first started learning how to drive a car, I learned on an automatic transmission, right? And it wasn't until my early 20s that I learned how to drive manual transmission. And yeah, I more or less was figuring it out by myself, but man, that was a rough ride. I could keep the car going, right? And I could keep the car moving. But it wasn't until my husband, who was my boyfriend at the time, right? He was an expert at driving manual transmission. And he just said, okay, let me just teach you how it's really done. And boom, much, much smoother driver after that. So let's see. Caleb says the amputee clinic at the James A. Haley VA is top notch. It really is, and I've had a chance to work with some of their people there. Actually, oh gosh, I didn't announce this, guys. My Strong Body books, they are at the James Haley VA Center here in Tampa. Ah, yes, so they are starting to use my books as part of their education program for their residents that are training there. Whew, I forgot to announce that. That happened about a month ago. So, yay. Guys, and here's another one. So, yes, it's a shameless plug, but because it is my book, but I mean, they're good books, man. Um, if you go to the website I'm putting down below, I have over 150 exercises in that program, my strong body program for above the knee and below the knee amputees. I have the books that you saw here. I have a book for above the knee amputee and a book for below the knee amputee. So all the video exercises that you see in the subscription program, they're all in here as well. So those of you who are looking for a good start, and I also have a lot of information, a lot of explanations in the book, a lot of explanations in the videos. That you can use. And that brings me to the next question that I had. Dean. Dean asked, can you tell me if you have in your 150 videos exercises for hip disarticulation amputees? If so, how many would you say? So unfortunately, I don't have protocols specifically for hip disarticulations. Come here, Bob. We're going to demonstrate real quick. All right, so just so you guys understand, those of you who are kind of new to the world of amputee, we've got below the knee, which is somewhere around here, right? An amputation here. We have above the knee, which means an amputation anywhere along the femur. And then we have a hip disarticulation, which, well, Bob's hip is actually pretty solid. So basically it's a complete removal of the femur itself, okay? So no, technically I do not have hip disarticulation protocols within my strong body program. However, I did promise Dean that I would talk a little bit about exercises that would be applicable to hip disarticulation patients. First one, core exercises, and those are in my book. So if you are a hip disarticulation patient and you're looking for core exercises for amputees, the ones that are in my book and in my videos are something that you would be able to do. Okay. The higher up you go on the chain with your amputation, right? The more you have to depend on the muscles that are in this area. So if you're a below the knee amputee and an above the amputee, your glutes need to be solid. Your core needs to be solid. The further up you go, the more solid all of that has to be to work together. I remember there was this one, I don't get to see too many hip disarticulation patients because it's just not as common as obviously above the knee and below the knee amputations. But I remember I was doing a video consult with a prosthetist that I love working with. His name is Alex. And we were seeing, he had a hip disarticulation patient in his clinic, a young man. And, Alex just called me up to help me so that I could help him kind of troubleshoot with that. And it was interesting. We just started doing the gentle weight shifting exercises. And I noticed that the patient was not really getting it. And so over the video, kind of taught him how to engage his core a little bit more. And he started being more stable with his weight shifting. Right. So again, if you're a hip disarticulation, you're going to be depending more on that core muscle. And the core muscle, again, it's not just the sexy six pack. It's that transverse abdominis way deep in there. It's all the multifidus muscles, the back extensor muscles in the back. It's the diaphragm right here. And then it's the pelvic floor. Okay. All of that comprises the core. So that's what's going to be a large focus of your hip dysarticulation recovery. The other part is strengthening the sound leg, right? As much as we would like in a perfect world, people who wear a prosthesis are using their prosthesis equal amounts as their sound leg. But we all know that that's not true. That's something we have to continually work on, right? And the higher up your amputation, the more prone you are to using that sound leg. Okay. So, regardless if you're below the knee, above the knee, hip dysartic, you need to really strengthen the sound leg as well because it is going to take a little bit more abuse. Now, the longer your residual limb, the more you need to work on really making that prosthesis do the work that it's supposed to do. Yeah? Okay, Dean, I promise you I would do that. All right. Let's see what we got. Uh, okay. Sorry, guys, I'm going back to these comments here and I can't forget my Instagram. All right. Mm. Denise says, PT is critical. Not only are you learning to walk again, they provide services for evaluating your home situation for accessories you may need, like ramps, shower benches, and mobility items. My PT sessions also included room by room situations and how to navigate getting in and out of a car, sessions for family members who would be caring for me. They had a car apartment set up for all of these things. If at all possible, please don't skip this step. And Denise is referring to home health services. And yeah, when I worked home health for 8 years and I did a lot of home evaluations, and that was the big part of my job in that particular setting was teaching a person how to navigate their home and teaching their family members. Thank you for bringing that up, Denise. Emily says the physical aspect is hard. The mental impact has been even harder. Benny, I am so glad you're here, man. Let's see. So Victor says my insurance company won't pay for it. Okay, and this is the part, guys. Actually, Julie, if you have any helpful insight, I would love to hear from you on this, Julie. When it comes to physical therapy, and guys, I have a private practice here in Tampa that's exclusively for working with amputees. But full disclosure, I don't accept insurance. And part of the really, really long story about that is I spent so many years working for insurance based clinics, working for hospitals, working for home health companies. And I always felt like my hands were tied behind my back because of insurance companies especially when it came to my amputee patients. So when I opened up my own clinic, I decided to do an out of network cash pay only clinic. So I am not the expert on insurance. I know just enough to know that I chose not to work with insurance companies for my own particular clinic. But there are a lot of physical therapists, a lot of good PTs out there that do accept insurance. Victor, it's medically necessary. It's a medically necessary service for you as an amputee. So don't give up. I know that's not very helpful right now. And I wish I were more knowledgeable on the ins and outs of insurance coverage with physical therapy. And that's kind of giving me an idea for a future show that I need to bring on one of my colleagues who is more versed in the insurance side of physical therapy reimbursement. Again, Julie, if you have any pearls of wisdom on that, I would love to hear it right now, or any resources for Victor. But again, Victor, depending on your insurance, I would start squeaking that wheel. Don't accept no for an answer. Call that insurance company, that little 1-800 number on the back of that card, insurance card. Call them and say, this is what's going on with me. Why aren't you approving my physical therapy? I know sometimes it's what the physical therapist writes. So, for example, if you were receiving physical therapy services, Victor, and your PT ran out, it's up to the physical therapist to write letters of medical necessity to prove that you need this physical therapy. If you've never even been seen by a physical therapist, then it's up to your doctor to do these notes. Okay. Another thing that you can do is, and again, this is a thinking outside the box kind of scenario. If you've never been seen by a physical therapist, it might be worth your effort to pay out of pocket for one session with a physical therapist, have them evaluate you, and write up a report stating why you need physical therapy and submit that evaluation to your insurance company. Don't give up on that, Victor. You have insurance. The insurance is supposed to work for you. That's why you're paying for it, or that's why your employer is paying for it. And as an amputee, if you need physical therapy services, you have a right to it. So start by calling that excuse me, by calling your ay Dios mío. Start by calling your insurance company and finding out what's the deal and see what it is that you need to do to get those services approved. Oh, Dulcie says, love that you have my video program. Awesome. Richard says, great book. Use it for balance today with a missing toe. Glad to hear that you're using it, Richard. I appreciate that. Thank you. Um, Yes, Denise. And the person, and I'm putting her on the spot, I don't know if she's still listening in, is Julie Conley. She's been a wonderful resource. I know for some of my viewers with regards to insurance reimbursement on their prosthetic componentry. So again, I don't know if she's still watching, but if she is, I would love to hear her input. Marianne says, I've been doing lots of butt exercise. I was told I had kitten butt. I have never heard of Marianne, you always make me laugh. Kitten butt. That's a new one. Oh my gosh, that's hilarious. And it's now I have a mental image of a kitten butt in my head. Okay, thank you for that, Marianne. All right, Julie. Julie says my PT issues happened before I became a denial bulldog. Wish I had been more prepared to challenge it. Um, Julie, you and I need to do a catch up session. Patricia says, is there a time when an inpatient rehab would be more beneficial than outpatient? I'm a left above the knee amputee for almost 3 years. I've been going to PT on and off, but not progressing as much as I would like. Wondering if an inpatient rehab would be more helpful. Um, in a perfect world, yes. Yes. So way back when, and this was before even I became a practicing physical therapist, we're talking like the 1960s and 70s and possibly early 80s. If you were an amputee, your inpatient rehab was for months. And this also included people who were paraplegics and quadriplegics with spinal cord injuries, traumatic brain injuries. Your rehab was extensive. Your inpatient rehab was extensive. And then insurance came along, and I know I'm making insurance out to be the bad guy tonight. Insurance came along and basically it started cutting. So now it's just like if you're an amputee, you're lucky if you get 10 days, 2 weeks in inpatient rehab. So the criteria for inpatient rehab, if you are in a hospital setting, if you just had your surgery, right? The criteria is that you are not able to go safely home, right? If home is your ultimate destination, right? And you do not have the safe mobility to go home, that is part of the criteria for being able to qualify for inpatient rehab. The other criteria is that you have to be able to tolerate at least 3 hours of therapy a day, because that's what you'll be receiving in inpatient rehab, a minimum of 3 hours of therapy a day. So you have to be able to tolerate that. You have to be able to demonstrate that you are not safe to go home. And you also have to be able to demonstrate that you have made progress in that inpatient hospital stay. Okay. So that's the three main criteria, at least in Florida. And I'm pretty sure it's like that all around the United States, some flavor of that within each state. But that's the basic guidelines. So that's, again, another reason why your physical therapist can get kind of rabid about making you do your mobility right after your surgery, because if they think that you should go to inpatient rehab, they're trying to show that you have the ability to tolerate that much therapy and that you have the ability to progress. Okay. Now, occasionally, I've had some of you as viewers tell me that you were able to have readmission into inpatient rehab even after you were discharged home, to have a short course stay of inpatient rehab. And I think that's absolutely wonderful, especially if that particular inpatient rehab has a physical therapist who knows how to work with amputees. Okay. Now, how that happened for these folks, I don't know. I really don't know, Patricia. I don't know what kind of insurance they had that was willing to pay for that. I don't know what the criteria was for the inpatient rehab center. But if you feel like the reason you're not making enough progress is because you're not receiving enough intense therapy, then yeah, inpatient rehab would be something to explore. Okay. If you think that you're not making progress because perhaps your therapist doesn't have the experience, that's a different story. Okay. That's a different story. I know that myself and my colleagues who are physical therapy amputee specialists, when we get our patients in outpatient, we get them moving and we can make a lot of progress as long as the prosthesis is fitting well, right? And we're not having problems with the socket. We can make a lot of progress. Okay, so just a couple things to consider, Patricia. But yeah, I'd be curious if that's an option for you, if you wouldn't mind letting me know how that happened, right? Mm. Marianne says a PT told me that at boot camp. That's funny. Ed, there's my boy Ed. All right. Ed is like I said, he is an amazing physical therapist and he runs circles around me. He says, fight for your services. May have to have peer-to-peer of your physician physiatrist with the insurance doctor. Can go a long way. Don't accept no. Thank you very much for reminding me of that part, Ed. So yeah, there's a peer-to-peer thing. So basically, if you are being denied services, right, your physician can request a peer-to-peer, meaning your physician can request to speak with the physician in the insurance that works for the insurance company, and they can duke it out, right? Make it sound like a boxing match, but they can duke it out and see, and he can explain from one peer to another why it is that you need physical therapy. And I wholeheartedly agree with Ed. Don't give up. um okay, thank you, Ed. So Ed is saying readmission into rehab, into inpatient rehab, usually has to be within 30 days of discharge. So that's one of the criteria there. um Kesha says, I've gone 3 times, once after surgery and 2 times for below the knee gait training. I also had revision surgery. So, yeah, guys, for those of you who have had revisions, meaning you had surgery again, then yes, and that kind of qualifies you. That's one of the qualifying criteria for being able to go back into inpatient rehab. All right, let me. Mm. That remains to be debated, Ed. I wholeheartedly disagree with you. Um, All right. Let's look at the text message questions because I love guys, speaking of which, let me just do this now. If you guys are interested, how many of you received my text this evening? Raise show of hands. How many of you guys got my text alert this evening? Okay, so those of you who are new, who haven't been on the show long enough, I know sometimes it can be a little tricky finding a live video on Facebook or YouTube or now Instagram, right? So I have a texting service. I do not spam people. You can ask my folks on the show. I don't send you a bunch of useless text messages. I just send a message once or twice a week with the links to my show, just to make it easy for you to join the show. So the way for you to sign up for my text messages is text, and I put it up there, Cosi Talks, all caps, one word, to the number that I have listed there. The cool thing is you can text me your questions. Yay. By the way, those of you who have signed up, I keep forgetting to ask you this every week. Those of you who have signed up for my text messages, it doesn't tell me who you are. So if you don't mind, if you don't mind doing this, text me your name so that I know who it is that I'm talking to, because so many of you are texting me and I go, I'm pretty sure I know this person, but I don't know which one of my viewers this is. So if you guys have a chance to do that, text me your name, and that way I can just start labeling some of these numbers in my text messaging here. If you don't want to, that's fine, but I just like to know who I'm talking to at times. Oh, yay, a lot of you got it. Sean is saying she doesn't send spam. Okay, good. Andrea got it. All right, so those of you who sent me your questions, let's get to it. Emily says, can you demonstrate how to push my knee into the mat when I am lying down? I'm working on this in physical therapy, and because of my spina bifida, I can't feel what muscles I'm supposed to be using, and I can't feel if I'm doing it right and can't see if I'm doing it right because I'm lying down. So, 2 questions, Emily, and maybe you can clarify this for me. Are you pushing your knee into the mat because you're trying to activate your quad and your hamstrings, or are you trying to stretch it out? Because that kind of makes a difference. Can you type that in the comment section? I'm going to go to another question. This is an easy one. Ooh, what are some good websites that won't break the bank for below the knee pants? So weird. I just came across this this post by the Be More Adaptive Caitlin. I don't know, some of you on Facebook might belong to her group. So, anyways, she made the post about this company called Curves and Combats. I put the website on there, curvesandcombats.com. Guys, I know nothing about this clothing line, but she was saying that they had a bunch of pants for women for amputees and that they were on sale for $15. So she was encouraging people to go check out the website. I know, right? 15 bucks. It's really good. She thinks that they're trying to sell them off because perhaps they're not selling. So if you guys go and just check out the website and if you make purchases, it might encourage them to make more. So I mean, I haven't even seen the website myself. I don't know, but it popped up in my feed literally 5 minutes. Before I went live. So the other hint to that is when it comes to BK and AK, it's access to the prosthesis, right? So I usually tell a lot of my patients, look for those zipper pants. We have a lot more options available where you have the zipper going up the side of the leg. I have one young lady that she just had a bunch of pants that were just really good quality pants and she didn't want to get rid of them. So she just found a seamstress who was able to put in an invisible zipper. And that's something you want to ask for specifically. I do a lot of sewing, so I know all this stuff. I love this stuff. An invisible zipper. If you don't have any issues with your fine motor skills and you can use zippers without a problem, the invisible zipper. If you do have issues with fine motor, then you might want to talk to your occupational therapist, and they have that really cool little hook thing that hooks onto the zipper to help it bring it up and down. In the knee push down. Okay. So Emily, if your therapist is trying to get you to activate your quad muscle, then I would actually encourage you to be sitting up, okay? Because part of activating the quad muscle is looking at it. Your brain needs that feedback to see those muscles twitching. So actually, let me just, oh yeah, I'm shameless plugging this book. You know I'm going to use it. I just love my book. What can I say? All right, here we go. Those of you who have my book, aha, quad sets, right? So this is the one for the below the knee, and it would look pretty much the same for the above the knee. So as you can see, I have quad sets here without the prosthesis, quad sets with the prosthesis. So for those of you who have the book, you can reference it. It's on page 23 and 24. So basically you see the positioning of the patient there, okay? And as you can see, I have Damon, my model, looking at his knee to activate his quads. Because sometimes when it's fresh from the OR and it's all hot and bothered and painful, right? Your brain is like, I don't want to touch those quads. I don't want those quads moving because it's going to hurt. So sometimes you have to look at the muscle and get it to kind of start the twitching motion. Other times, for example, in the case of Damon, his quads were just very weak because he never received that physical therapy after his amputation for years and years and years, right? So he needed that visual feedback to start the twitching of the quad muscle, okay? Now, if for whatever reason, oh, Ginny, you're an angel. Thank you so much for putting that up there. Ginny just put up the link for Curves and Combat Boots. I hope I got that right. The website with the $15 below the knee pants. Check it out. If for whatever reason your physical therapist is insisting that you lie down and is still trying to make you activate your quad, if it's for that purpose, then you can put a mirror, right? So you can put a mirror, and it doesn't have to be anything fancy. I mean, just a little just mirror, right? So that you can see your leg from where you're at. Okay. Now, if the purpose of lying you down and pushing your knee in is to get you to stretch out your knee, that's a different story. You don't want to be very aggressive, especially if you have lymphedema in that knee. You got to go gentle. And again, Emily, this is something that your physical therapist should kind of be teaching you and talking to you about. Sometimes you might need to do, and I think I have a stretch here. Let me see if I can find it. I have a section on flexibility. Aha. Ta-da. If the purpose of what your therapist is trying to do is trying to stretch out your knees, stretch out your hamstrings, then that's kind of what you would be looking at. It's in the flexibility section of the book. Okay, where you're lying down and you're bringing your knee up and you can kind of control the stretch behind the knee. Again, this is something that you need to discuss with your physical therapist. When it comes to stretching, I tend to be a little more conservative because sometimes we can actually do more damage than good if we get too aggressive with stretching and if we're not using proper form. So, in that regard, I tell you, make sure you talk to your clinicians and have them show you how to do it properly. Yes? Okay. So yeah, Emily, again, if you're doing it to activate the quad, then yeah, you need to lay eyes on it, especially if you have paralysis there from the spina bifida to see if there's any muscle activation, right? Ed says actually inseam zippers are common. Good gravy. All these messages are keep coming in. All right. Inseam zippers are common, becoming more so at any dry cleaners, though may have to emphasize only one leg or they might end up doing both. Yeah. And again, guys, you can do one of two things. You can either buy a nice pair of pants that you know is going to last you forever and ever and ever, and make the investment to put that zipper in there. That's usually what I recommend because again, it's worth the investment to be able to access your prosthesis. Yeah. I know. Ooh, so I have a partnership with Lululemon, and they're wonderful. They've outfitted several of my amputees locally here. They are a little bit of a higher price point, but they do offer a hemming service. Okay. So those of you who are my ladies who like to wear your leggings, right? And they like I said, they are a higher price point, but they're very good quality leggings and they last a long time when you take care of them. I know one of my ladies, she's an above the knee amputee, and she chose to have the leggings hemmed so that it would be the length of her residual limb. So she has one short leg and then the full length legging on the other side. And this hemming service is provided for free at Lululemon. So that's an option right there. Sean says, I live in Florida, so I wear shorts more than pants, but I do have jeans and dress pants and sweatpants. So yeah, Sean, again, I would recommend your sweatpants. It may not be worth it. And usually sweatpants, you can pull them up, especially if you're below the knee and it's easier to pull up. But for jeans and dress pants, might be worth the effort to invest in just a one-sided zipper right there. Okay, let's see. We've got Ooh, this was kind of a fun question. Ed says REI hiking pants with zip away below the knee is also another resource. Yes, we are seeing a lot more pants like the cargo pants, especially for the men where they have that zipper that goes across right above the knee and you can kind of make them into shorts. Another option there. Okay, so this person says, why do amputees go backwards on the elliptical machine? I thought it was just me, but I've seen others online doing it that way too. Just got a new leg the 3rd of January and I was able to go forward for the first time since amputation. So basically, when I see people, I mean, I used to do elliptical eons and eons and eons ago. It's just easier. It requires less muscle power. You're relying more on momentum when you're going backwards, right? Problem with that is you're putting your knee into hyperextension, right? And that can start to cause some really big problems, especially if you're below the knee amputee and you're pushing that knee back, right? And if you're an above the knee amputee and you're going backwards like that, that means you're putting your sound knee into hyperextension, meaning, right? And we don't want that, okay? So if you're having difficulty going forward, it's because you don't have the strength yet, right? Your quads and your hamstrings and your glutes have to learn to work together, have to get stronger, and they have to learn how to work together to be able to do the forward motion on the elliptical. So the easiest thing would be to put it at a resistance. You don't want to remove all resistance because then it's just floppy and you're just going crazy, right? You just want to put just enough resistance that you can push through it and take it slowly. And you can start building the strength that way. Okay. Yes. Ooh, okay. And then the other question from the texting. Let me make sure I don't have any questions on the Instagram side. I keep forgetting to check. Okay. Here we go. Okay. It says, I'm most curious about getting a running leg or the best way to use the shower and not negatively impact a prosthetic. So it's kind of two different questions. If you're curious about the running leg, again, this is something that I highly encourage you to visit with a physical therapist. And again, I know it's kind of tough to meet with a therapist that um, has amputee experience and then specifically that teaches amputees how to run. That's something that I have branched into doing in the past few years. I love it. I'm a runner girl myself, so I love it when I have somebody who's a running candidate and I'm able to teach them to do that. But I will say not everyone is a running candidate. Have I taught amputees how to run for safety purposes? Yes, like burning building, tiger chasing after you, your child is running into traffic. It's good to know the basics of running mechanics or moving quickly from one place to another for safety purposes. But actual running as an exercise or as a hobby, again, not necessarily everybody is meant for it. But I don't ever discourage anybody from learning more about it and learning to see if they are a candidate or not. Okay. In many cases, I look, some people who come to see me for running, I say, yep, you can do running, but we have to put you on a really rigorous strengthening program to make sure that we protect those joints and make sure that they don't start to break down on you. Yes? Okay. So that's one of the things there. And again, that's where you need the services of a physical therapist. And if the PT is not necessarily familiar with working with running prosthetic devices, this is where you want to pair up your prosthetist and your physical therapist and make an introduction, right? The other part is which way is the way to use a prosthetic in a shower without negatively impacting the prosthesis. Number one, ask your prosthetist or your physical therapist. What kind of a foot or knee do you have? Is it waterproof or is it not waterproof? So that's the biggest thing. If it's not waterproof, do not put it in the shower because you are throwing away thousands and thousands of dollars down the drain. Literally. Okay. There are wonderful options out there on the market, and I got to get on College Park because they said they were going to send me something. But in the meantime, I really need to fix this bag of toys here. So when it comes to showering, the majority of people I know prefer to sit down, or they do not have their prosthesis on in the shower. Some people have extraordinarily good balance and they can take their shower standing up on one leg safely. Again, do be safe at all times. But for the most part, most people prefer to sit down in a shower chair and not have the prosthesis on so that they can properly wash that residual limb. Okay. If you are really determined to have a prosthesis on when you're in the shower, then you need to get like a shower leg. And that can be as simple as having an old socket that still fits decently, and then just attaching a very simple water foot underneath it. It could be a satch foot, something that's very simple and inexpensive. The Breeze Foot by College Park is a very inexpensive water foot. It has a drain at the bottom, so it's meant to be in water, and you're good to go. Kenny says, "Hey there, Beth. You're in Sarasota. Awesome." Kenny says, "I live in Virginia and I wear shorts all year round. I'm a BK since 2020 and jeans are too tight. I do wear sweatpants when it gets too cold here in Virginia Beach." Everybody has their different way uh, of the dress code once I become an amputee. Ashley says, "I tell my students who try to run out of the building to wait for me because I didn't run when I had two legs and they usually stop in their tracks, thinking about what I just said, which lets me catch up to them and then get back into the classroom easily." Ashley, you crack me up. And guys, it's true. Even folks who have two anatomical legs, I see, like I said, I love to run myself. I'm a runner and I'm not an amputee. And I'm having to constantly be vigilant about my strengthening routine, about how I'm training for running to make sure I don't get injuries. Right. And that's without an amputation. With an amputation, you extra so. Okay. So again, it's just part of if you're doing a sport that you love and things like that, there's things that go along with doing that sport successfully, especially if you want to continue doing it for a really long time. I joke around that I want to be that 90-year-old woman who's able to finish a 5K. So I know I have to protect my joints at this age to make sure I reach that goal. And I advocate the same thing for my viewers and my patients. Denise says, I use a shower bench. I don't want to have a prosthesis on in the shower since I want to be able to fully wash my residual limb. And honestly, that's kind of my professional opinion as well. I think when it comes to the shower, your skin just needs a break from the liner. You need to have good hygiene, good washing techniques there. But I can see where some people might say, nope, I still want to use my prosthesis in the shower. Well, okay. You just got to make sure that your residual limb is getting fully washed at some point once every 24 hours. Okay. Whew, guys, it's been like almost, wow. We started at 8:30, an hour and a half. You guys have kept me talking a really long time this evening, and I love it. I love it. We had a wonderful showing this evening, guys. I truly, really appreciate the support. Thank you for those of you who came back to watch me. I know I took a couple of weeks off to be with my family during Christmas and New Year's. So thank you guys again. Thank you for the past 6 years of broadcasting this show. And here's to another wonderful year. Hope to see you guys. And guys, keep looking at my social media. Like I said, I have a new social media person. So we were going to be bringing out the content in the next few months. So keep your eyes peeled for that. Jenny, loved having you here tonight, as always, guys. Thank you so much for letting me be a part of your lives this evening. I will see you, same bat time, same bat channel, next week. All right, guys. Have a wonderful evening. God bless.